Hey, shalom, shalom,
Shalom.
shalom lakam, which is peace unto you all. Hayawam tawab la'atham, which is good day unto you all. Anakna waha'i barisha Allah, we the Hebrew Israelites coming to you week in and week out through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, to preach to you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indians, Haitians, and Israelite foreigners. Nachamatam, Kaya, Malakata Shamayim, Kwara, repent ye for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. First and foremost, before we get started, we're going to go ahead and give our praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Wahawadash. While double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that taught us this truth and rule well, and much respect to you bros that they're pushing this truth with all righteousness and sincerity. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
All right, so essentially, as the lesson is entitled, it says, "I see men as trees," which it will go into walking, which that's a pretty much a snippet of Mark 8 in the 24th chapter. You see, because in the creation of trees and men. All right, actually, we can start with Hosea chapter 12 and verse 10, Baba Kushah, but pretty much when we look at creation, all right, it's a lot of similitudes, all right, and a similitude in this, all right, are men and trees. You see, because men were made upright, all right, and they resemble trees in many different aspects. And Adamar Tazal, we can illustrate that, in the spirit, and get those similitudes and those examples.
You said Hosea 12 and 10?
Khan Baba Kushah.
Hosea chapter 12, verse 10, it says, I have also spoken by the prophets, and I have multitude visions and used similitudes by the ministry of the prophets.
Says, I have also spoken by the prophets, pursuant to Luke 1 and 70, or Hebrews 1 and 1, the Lord always speaks through men. So it says, I have multiplied visions and used similitudes by the ministry of the prophets, because Jake is a very picturistic or picture people. We see pictures, that's why a lot of times Jake can make the music, Jake can sensationalize and see things. Jake is very in tune with creation and art. So essentially in creation, again, things are similitudes of one another. So again, a similitude here that we have will be men and trees. And if we could get the we can start at I'm gonna get this Ecclesiastes 7, and then Yeshai, you can hold Mark 8 and 22 or 21. But this is Qahalat Ecclesiastes chapter 7, and we'll give verse 29. And it says, Lo, this only have I found, that the Most High hath made men upright, but they have sought out many inventions. And pretty much the point that I wanted to get from this was men were made upright, all right, spiritually, and then also, the righteous lineage was made upright. All right, you see, spiritually, but then also physically, because you got your spine that essentially holds you up, and which what holds the righteous lineage up is the counsel, or the counsel of the Lord,
Want me to get that for you?
Okay.
This is Mark 8 and verse 21, and it reads, And he said unto them, How is it that ye do not understand? And he cometh to Bethsaida.
And again, again too, a lot of times, the Lord Yahweh Shai, it will be things that, he that has ears to hear, let him hear. Pretty much going into the spirit, because the elect, all right, those that are upright are going to have ultimately the spirit dwelling with them, so they can understand the similitudes. Because the scriptures, the counsel of the Lord is not given to everybody, so that they can stand. It's given to the righteous lineage, so that the righteous lineage can stand.
Con. Verse 22, And he cometh to Bethsaida, and they bring a blind man unto him, and besought him to touch him. And he took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes and put his hands upon him, he asked him if he saw aught. And he looked up and said, I see men as trees walking.
Right, and this is it's manifold. It says, and he looked up and said, I see men as trees walking. Because men, in the spirit, ultimately, men are made upright, as trees. You see, but then also in the scriptures, men are compared to trees. Pursuant to scriptures and Judges. Also, this scripture right here, but pretty much, men are compared to trees.
Mm-hmm.
Bros have any precepts?
Khan, I got one for you.
Okay.
This is Jeremiah 11:16. It says, just to back you up, it says, Yahweh called thy name a green olive tree, fair and of goodly fruit. With the noise of a great tumult, he hath kindled fire upon it, and the branches of it are broken. So, just backing up what the brother is saying, you know how men are comparable to trees. Same thing with nations. You know, us as the children of Israel, we are compared to as a green olive tree. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can go to Romans the 11th chapter. You know, it talks about the wild olive tree. But nevertheless, you know, the point being is that we are compared to as trees, right? Like the brother mentioned, being upright, right? And what makes you upright? You know, abiding the law, right?
Right.
Abiding by the will of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, you know, abiding by his statutes, you know, laws, statutes, commandments, all that.
Con. We can start in this article.
I have a precept right quick, if I may.
Con, you good?
Just to add to the point. This is Genesis chapter 3 and verse 6. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. So this is going into the story of Adam and Eve being beguiled by the serpent, which when we go into the serpent in Genesis, that's speaking of a diviner, a lineage of diviners, of people, right? And when you jump down to let me see here, jump down to verse 8, it says, and they heard the voice of Yahweh power walking in the garden in the cool of the day. It was a prophet, right? Like we had read in Hosea 12, right?
Right.
The Lord spoke by his men, right? It says, and Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh power amongst the trees of the garden, right? And those trees, that's not actually speaking of literal trees, right? It's speaking of the nations.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Had that.
Con. Yeah, we can start in the article.
Khan. In this article from shepherdchiropractic.com, pretty much it says, what does a tree and your vertebrae have in common? And it says, this is a very interesting picture regarding the incredible power and adaptation or an adaptation of nature.
Which,
So it shows this picture right here.
Yep. Because pretty much, with your spine, it adjusts to, the environment that's around it. Same thing, as the tree. The tree pretty much molds around its environment, so that it can pretty much so that it can survive. All right, same thing, with council. The council, it's the spirit that, Aitaza means a tree, but then Aitaza is also the spine. You see, but then Aitaza also goes into council because the council is going to be molded so that essentially that individual can be able to survive, and thrive in that specific situation.
Right. Can stand.
Mm-hmm.
It's heavy you say that because, what does Isaiah 33:6 say? Wisdom and knowledge should be the stability of thy times.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So it makes sense, and that's what is needed, given unto us, so that way we can stand in these times,
Mm-hmm.
be able to adapt to our environment.
Because if you notice, like we was talking about before we cut on the camera, but if you notice, like, houses being destroyed, in the instance of like a tornado or a hurricane, sometimes the trees will be uprooted, you see, but if you notice, it's not the very, trees that got the thick, roots. A lot of times it'll be the trees that kind of sway, with the wind that be surviving, and that's essentially because how the spine is set up is to ultimately maneuver and adjust in those specific situations, Shalom, Maki, Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Chakuras Prakata.
Shalom.
Shalom, y'all. That's what I said. That's what I said.
But yeah, one point I wanted to make, you mentioned about the trees, right, that get blown by the wind a lot. You look at like something like a willow tree, they have the very thick branches, or like some of these trees, like you mentioned, that get blown by the wind a lot. They develop these thick like stumps, to where they're able to withstand, because they've been pretty much in a sense they've been tested. They've been
Right.
exercised through that wind. To develop
Right.
that resistance and be able to adapt in that.
Mm-hmm. Con, we can start with that. The article if bros didn't have none.
Con, continue on in this.
Con, actually, I could read if you. I got it right here. It says, "This is a very interesting picture regarding the incredible power and adaptation of nature. This tree grew around the fence that was placed near to it. As the tree grew larger in size, it changed and adapted to the forces and stresses that the steel fence placed on it. This is called Wolff's Law, which that's what Esau calls it, which means that your spine or bones, just like the tree, will mold themselves based upon the amount of forces or stress they are placed under. The more stress and strain that you place on the spinal vertebrae, your body will not only adapt and conform and react to these additional stressors. These stressors can be in the form of improper posture, bad ergonomics, and repetitive habits. Or it could be where you were involved in an auto accident, slip, or fall, which may have thrown your spine out of alignment, which caused your body to adapt to these misalignments. That's pretty much the point I wanted to get from that article. But could you go to the blue letter, Baba Kusha?
I want to make a
Con,
quick point on that too, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you think about the restoration of Israel, Yahweh Shemel Shai giving us this light once more, giving us this breath, right? We're now able to sustain ourselves as a tree. The tree is a vital part of the ecosystem, right?
Right.
So, with being deprived of those necessary, you know, elements such as the breath, we was destitute out here. We was fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
We was beat down. We did not know what we were doing. But Shemal Shai is giving us that healing, and continues to heal us, by correcting our improper ways of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
We're being strengthened. Our roots are being, uh, tightened.
Mm-hmm. If I could add too, pursuant to Matthew 7:24, that house that was built upon that, that solid foundation, that rock, we're
That's
able
it.
to essentially, be rooted in that rock, which is Yahweh Shai.
Mhm.
So from there, could you go to Leviticus chapter 3 and we'll get verse 9.
Con. This is Leviticus 3 and verse 9. It says, "He shall offer of the sacrifice of the peace offering an offering made by fire unto Yahweh, the fat thereof, and the whole rump. It shall he take off hard by the backbone, and the fat that covereth the inwards, and all the fat that is upon the inwards."
Can we get that word for backbone?
Con. Backbone.
It says
Itazah.
Itazah, and it says from root word Itazah. Baba Kusha, can you scroll down?
Con.
And it says spine, backbone, or sacrum. It says spine close to the fat tail. It says the spine as giving firmness to the body. All right, that's essentially what gives the tree firmness as well. It's talking about, it resembles the righteous, because the righteous are made, upright because of the spine. That's essentially how we're able to walk. It's from the spine, From that, could you go to scroll up, Baba Kusha,
Con.
and then click on the root word.
When we go down to the lexicon.
Right, Con. It says to make firm, and then I have you go back up, Baba Kusha,
Con.
and then you'll go over to, should be to the right, the arrows by the Strongs. Does it give you that option?
Oh yeah, right here.
Con, yeah. See if it and
How
do
far
one
do
more.
I go?
Yeah, one more time. Yeah, right there. Root word etymology. And we can actually read this one too. It says trees, wood. It says timber. Now, Baba Kushai, you can scroll back up and then get the root word.
God.
And it says trees. It says stock, plant, stick, gallows. Then it says plank, a stick. And also, you know, when we look at you can stay right there, bro. I'm gonna get this real fast. This is Ezekiel. This is Ezekiel chapter 37. All right, and we'll get verse 15. And it says, the word of the Lord came again unto me, saying, moreover, thou son of man, take thee one stick and write upon it for Judah and for the children of Israel, his companions. Then take another stick and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Yasha'Allah, his companions, and join them, and join them one to another into one stick, and they shall become one in thine hand. And when the children of thy people shall speak unto thee, saying, wilt thou not shew us what thou meanest by these? Say unto them, thus saith the Lord power, behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, his fellows, and will put them with him, even with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in mine hand. All right, and I want to get that word for stick, because this is talking about the 12 tribes chart. All right, and the thing about the word for stick is itazah. All right, and ultimately it gets its name from how stiff it is, you know, because when we look at the human spine, it's stiff. When we look at a tree, it's stiff, it's upright, you know. So when we look at the 12 tribes chart, it's firm. It's when something is firm, it's rooted, you know. So essentially, because you got guys that, you know, they don't ultimately believe on the 12 tribes chart, but we got some support in the spirit, you know, from the word firm. You know, it's something that you can rely on. You know, that's why it's the spirit that the Lord put it. He used the word for stick, you know, because the stick is something that's firm. You know, it's reliable.
If I may land back on that point too, you know, it ultimately ties into the gift of faith. You
Mm-hmm.
know, to be able to have the belief, you know, that this word is faithful and true. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and like you said, we have things that substantiate, you know, the secular history of the 12 tribe chart, right? The stories of our foreparents and their voyage from the Assyrian captivity, you know, landing over here in the Western Hemisphere, you know, the laws, the 10 tribes of
Mhm.
Israel, right? But, you know, again, ultimately, you know, that firmness, that's a gift, you know,
Right.
to be rooted, you know, that's a gift. It's not something that you can just up, you know, up and walk around and say, oh, I'm firm. No, that's a gift to be
Right.
firm. It's a gift of faith.
Right. Ultimately, like you said, going back to faith, you know, not everybody is blessed with the you know, with the understanding and the faith of the scriptures, you know.
Right. That's why, like you quoted in Matthew 7, right, about
Mm-hmm.
that house that was built on the rock. You know, hey, you got to be granted permission, you know, to have those deep roots.
Right.
You know, it's not something that you can just walk around and say, "Oh, I did that." Right. It's not like the scriptures speak about in Ephesians. You know, it's not so that you can boast. You know, it's
Right.
really a gift of the Lord. Because hey, he the one that plants. He's the one that ultimately roots and uproots.
Right.
Mhm.
I'm gonna get this real fast. This is Colossians chapter 2 and verse 6. It says, as ye have therefore received Hamashayach Yahawashai the Lord, so walk ye in him. And ultimately, you know, your spine allows you, you know, to walk, you know. And
Hmm.
it says, rooted and built up in him, and established in the faith, as ye have been taught, abounding therein with thanksgiving. You know, so we're supposed to be rooted in Yahweh Shai. Ultimately, that's how we're able to walk. You know, that's who gives us the faith. That's ultimately who we believe upon. You know, this word, this truth. You know.
Mhm.
Yep.
May I get something for you, Ak?
Mm-hmm.
This is Proverbs 2 and 6. It says, for Yahweh grants wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He
Mm.
grants a treasure of common sense to the honest. This is an NLT, by the way, Salakia. But it says he grants a treasure of common sense to the honest, He is a shield to those who walk with integrity. Pretty much those that walk upright.
Mm.
Mhm.
He gives them a common sense. He gives them this knowledge, right? But it says in verse 8, it says he guards the paths of the just and protects those who are faithful to him. So those are the ones that are given that common sense, that are given this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, right? Those that put their faith in him, put their trust in him. Those are the ones that are walking uprightly, as your brothers are going into.
Right. I'm gonna get this real fast. This is Proverbs Mashal chapter 19, and we'll get verse 20. It says, "Hear counsel and receive instruction, that thou mayest be wise in thy latter end. There are many devices in a man's heart. Nevertheless, the counsel of the Lord that shall stand." And that word for counsel, it goes into, it says Aitaza, and it says counsel, advice, purpose. It says a plan, and it says yeah, pretty much counsel, prudence, and wisdom. So ultimately the counsel of the Lord, that's going to stand. And again, as we mentioned, the counsel is going to be molded to that specific situation. Just as the trees that we got the example from the trees. The trees mold and bend, with their environment. So that's what the righteous do. The righteous ultimately bend and mold to the counsel, so that the righteous is able to stand, all right, and ultimately be better and increase in the latter end, as verse 20 went into.
Mm.
Man.
God, could we go to or excuse me, it said thou mayest be wise in thy latter end, because ultimately, like you mentioned, Yeshaya, them trees, they like you mentioned the point of like in so many words being battle tested, after a certain amount of time, it started to get them roots, and then like it's been
Mm-hmm.
through certain battles and stuff like that, so it's able to be hardened, and that's essentially how the righteous is.
God.
So from
Hey,
there, cool.
going through the what they call the fiery trials, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Being battle tested, being hardened, right? Pretty much being proved.
Right.
And when you look at the trees, right? Look at trees out in the forest. The ones that don't make it, they're the ones that are weak. That fall
Yep.
down, they end up tumbling or falling over. They're the ones that didn't get enough nutrients, or didn't get pretty much couldn't stand.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
God, we could go back to the next article.
Con, which one do you want me to get?
Let me see. We can get the one that says, it says nervous system like a tree rooted in the river of life.
Con. This one right here.
Con, we just read a little bit into that article.
All right, con. So it says nervous system. It says humans use the nervous system to communicate with the environment. It says it is divided into two main parts called the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system describes the brain and the spinal cord, from where the peripheral nervous system branches out to all the body parts.
Right. So it says pretty much the central nervous system, which includes the brain and the spinal cord. So if you liken that, your spinal cord, essentially it branches out, and it has, it goes into the nerves and things of that nature, you see. But your spine, it transport water as well, so when you look at a tree, it got the trunk, but then on top of that, it has the different little offshoots that goes into the branches, and then it waters the rest of the tree, so that it can ultimately survive, so the tree is like 80%, 70% water, you see. But we are also 70% water, and we can't live without actual water, you see. But I'm gonna get this real fast, because we need regular water and regular nourishment, you see. But the true water that we need ultimately is Yahweh Shai, pursuant to, I believe it's John the 4th chapter, but this is Job chapter 23 and verse 12. Verse 11, it says, "My foot hath held his steps, his way have I kept and not declined. Neither have I gone back from the commandment of his lips. I have esteemed the words of his mouth more than my necessary food." All right, and this word for food, it says Salat. This word for food, give me a second. Right here. Or well, it will go into akal, and pretty much akal goes into something that you consume. You know, so it can also, you know, the actual word for water is mayam, but you see, but akal also goes to something that you consume, and when you consume something, you're ingesting it. So ultimately, we know we need that spiritual water, you know, because if you drink regular water, well, you're gonna need some regular water again. What ultimately keeps us living and, you know, moving is this word, you know.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The water, you know, they be trying to drink some damn purified water. You know, you got to get the essential minerals.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the essential minerals. This water. You know, this truth is essential to the spirit. Matter of fact, if I could right quick
Hmm.
grab this right quick in Job. This is Job chapter 23, verse 12. It says, "Neither have I gone back from the commandment of his lips. I have esteemed the words of his mouth more than my necessary food." You know, so this word is essential, you know, to pretty much, you know, cultivating your spirit, mind, body, and spirit, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We can hop back to the article. You can actually you can skip down to the part under this diagram. Baba
Okay,
Kashaf.
Start right here.
Yeah.
It says the human body is designed and built according to the blueprint of a tree. Looking at the nervous system, it closely resembles the exterior design of trees.
Right, and just to go into that point, you know, we got the word for Aitaza. Can bro see it? Hold on, right there.
Yeah,
Look, so the eye goes into the eyes because you can see with your eyes. You know, you see with your eyes. So ayan goes into the eye, but then you got taza. Taza goes into tazad, which is the side, but then also goes into tazadak, which is the right. So a tree resembles the righteous because how it's designed, and it's a similar to, and they mirror each other because of how the Lord essentially set it up. You know, and a lot of times, you know, Esau treat the trees as if, you know, as if they don't have no purpose. You know, he go down to Brazil, cut down the whole rainforest. You know, he
mm-hmm.
cutting down trees, you know, everywhere just to build things up. You see, but the trees have an integral part of the environment. You know, it's a necessity. You know, so that we can breathe the oxygen. You know, but again, you
Right.
know, Esau treats it as if they unimportant. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He the base man. Here it is, this nigga
Hmm.
talking about some CO2 emission. Nigga, that shit is emitted everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Like the trees, you basically nullifying all of the Lord's creation with this idea of trying to rewrite how the earth is set to function. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's a fucking crazy mindset to have.
Right. I'm
Yeah.
gonna get this to back you up. This is Proverbs 29 and verse 2. It says, "When the righteous are in
Baba
authority."
Kushal, start at one. Start at one.
Con. This is Proverbs 29 and 1. It says, "He that being often reproved hardeneth his neck."
Hmm.
So,
Right. And when you think about all of the correction that Esau has received, going all the way back to Cain, you know, he is of the mindset that nah, I'm gonna do this shit my way. He's
Mm-hmm.
not gonna change. The intent of his heart, the scriptures speak about is that his heart is not upright.
Mm.
You know, like this nigga dead ass has a warped mindset to the will of Yahweh Bashim al Shai.
Con says, "Shall suddenly be destroyed, and that without remedy." Verse 2. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. So it says when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. You know, because the righteous ultimately is going to the scriptures say in Bon Sirach, the 10th chapter, you know, the city will be inhabited, you know, through prudence, roughly paraphrasing. So the righteous
Mm-hmm.
is going to run the world in prudence and wisdom. All right, the righteous rule book. It says, but when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn, and people are literally mourning. You see, because right now we're talking about the topic of trees. You know, if we're cutting down all of the trees, all right, ultimately, it's going to mess up the air. You know, trees act as a filter for the air. You know, so essentially, it's going to throw things out of whack. And then not only that, you know, you got animals and stuff that essentially stay in them trees too. So it's gonna mess up the ecosystem somewhere. And if you take how the Lord got it set up, all right, the Lord has everything set up for His purposes. You see, but those particular again creations, they supposed to stay in the trees, just like when Esau takes the shrimp from the water. They supposed to cleanse the water, you see, but Esau messes that area of the ecosystem up as well. Same thing with the trees, you know. So essentially, what he's doing, he's making everybody mourn, you know. So he's messing up how people breathe. That's why you'll go outside and they got that little chart, and they got the little colors, and they say, okay, the air quality is yellow,
Yeah.
orange, red. Why
Facts.
why is the air quality red? It shouldn't be red, you know.
Hmm.
It's
Yo, I be
crazy,
seeing that shit more and more. I'm like, God damn, we gotta get the fuck out of here.
right?
Hmm.
But yeah, from there we get this article right here. Let's get we can get you can get the people and actually get the special relationship between people and trees.
Let's see.
Oh no, no, Salah. Get the one that says trees communicate with each other through astonishing networks.
God.
And then we get the other article, and that's pretty much all I got. If bros didn't have none.
God. It says Tree Talk, exploring the communication of force. So it says, we are now becoming aware that trees are more complex than we thought, and that they live in constant interference with their environment.
Just like us. You know, that's why the
Hmm.
scripture said, I'm gonna get this real fast. I'm gonna get this. Give me a second. This is Bon Sirach chapter 30 and verse 25. It says a cheerful and good heart will have a care of his meat and diet, you know. So that's how the righteous is, you see. So that's how a tree is too, you know. And when you go into your diet, it's not just what you eat, it goes into your lifestyle and what's in your direct environment, you see. So essentially, you know, a person or specifically a righteous man is mindful of his environment, you see. So that's the same for trees, you know. And that's why again it's set up in the spirit that, you know, trees resemble the righteous, you know. And then
Hmm.
also too, it's showing that, you know, we have to, just like as we mentioned or in the earlier part of the video, we got to be connected to a source. We can't survive without a source, you know. And our source is Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai, you know.
Right. Right. So it says, over the last few decades, science has made some astonishing discoveries about trees. For a very long time in the West, trees were regarded either as raw material for wood or at best as decorative objects. But we are now realizing that they are more complex than we thought, and that they live in constant interference with their environment. What
Hmm.
if trees could communicate with each other? So it says, a surprising underground communication network. Peter Wohlenben, Wohlenben, wasn't the first to discover it, but he is credited with bringing public attention to the underground network through which trees exchange information and much more.
So when they say the underground network, pretty much as we have a nervous system, you know, our nervous system essentially we communicate with each other. We don't even have to talk. You know, essentially we people communicate with each other. So somebody might be, you know, fearful, or somebody might be elated or happy or something like that, and you don't even necessarily have to talk to them to understand that. You know, it goes back to that saying. You know, your energy introduces yourself before you even say a word when you walk into a room. So same thing with the tree. You know, essentially they communicate, you know, through the nervous system of the roots and stuff, because they all grounded into the earth, so they essentially can talk to each other through that network, how the Lord set it up, you know. Just as
Hmm.
you know, again, our nervous system communicates with the rest of our body. You know, if we got some type of pain or something like that, you know, our brain communicates. Say our hand was hurting, okay, your hand's hurting, so maybe your body sends, you know, blood cells to there so it can get healed if it was a cut or something.
Yep. You want me to make that point that I had made mention of before we
Mhm.
started recording?
Kanye, yeah, Baba Shah.
God, and in a spiritual sense too, as we spoke earlier of the trees being nations, we're starting to see that chemical is being emitted to the different trees.
Hmm.
the other nations that Babylon and Great America is going through pains, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're seeing that, damn, this is the end of the heathen reign, right? And they really smell blood in the water, you know. They see that the decay, the moral decay, the pomp of Babylon is being brought down. Like the scriptures say, are you become as weak as we? Right? They're seeing that, damn, this tree don't got that type of substance and strength that it once had in times past. And that's, it's in the sense, they're seeing that they're getting that transmission, you know?
Right. I got this too. This is Isaiah Yeshaya chapter 14 and verse 7. It says the whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Yeah, the fir trees rejoice at thee, because the trees, actual trees, they can, be in a sense of, okay, they're rejoicing because they're healthy, and
Right.
it says,
Oh, man, if I
mhm,
may add too, it's a video, and brothers had shared it a while back, but it was this guy, he plugged these like wires onto like the limbs of like tree leaves,
mhm,
and they were like emitting like sounds and like music, and the chemicals or the biology of the tree. It was pretty much like the molecules were like smiling,
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
you
the
know.
the the electrical impulses.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Come.
Finishing out, it says Isaiah 14 and 8. It says, "Yeah, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no feller is come up against us." And that's talking about actual trees, because I believe back in the Babylonian empires, the cedars of Lebanon, that cedars are essentially a very strong tree, and they're very they grow very tall, and they represent rulership as well. But I'm reading it again. It says, "Yeah, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no feller has come up against us." And the nations again are likened to trees. You see, but then also Esau has destroyed the people, because the people are likened to trees as well.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. If I'm gonna get something for you, bro,
Hmm.
real quick, here in Romans 8 and 22, I'm gonna read it. For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. Right? And you mentioned the root system that these trees have, how they're able to communicate. So this just shows you, further validates this verse right here, how all creation is groaning, man. They're able to
Right.
Hmm.
communicate one with another. They're able to, like yeah, like the brother Tazwan mentioned, they put those electrodes on that plant, and you could tell that it was smiling, but you could tell, all creation is groaning. All creation is in a mournful state, right?
Hmm.
Because it's being Esau being in this position of power. He has been allowed to run rampant and just destroy every goddamn thing. All the ecosystems, everything is out of balance. Everything is out of whack. Your brothers mentioned, how they're def- causing deforestation over there in the Amazon forest. Here it is. You know, the the trees, they absorb what they call it CO2, and then they
Hmm.
Hmm.
they release oxygen, a clean air. They're, like you
Hmm.
mentioned, they're the lungs of the earth. They clean the air.
Right.
So these people over here talking about, cows farting and releasing methane gas and goddamn too much CO2 in the air. Well, why the hell you cutting down these damn trees, man?
Right.
This
I
shit
got
don't make
this.
no damn sense.
I got this real fast. If bros and how none. This
Tell
is
you got it.
Isaiah 26 and verse 9. It says, "With my soul have I desired thee in the night, yet with my spirit within me will I seek thee early. For when thy judgments are in the earth, the inhabitants of the world will learn righteousness." Now I want to get this word for righteousness. And it says, what is right or just or normal. It says weights and measures. So pretty much, true balance. You see, because what Esau has done is the Lord had everything, balanced in a correct fashion, pursuant to, I believe it's Proverbs 11 and get this real fast too. This is Proverbs 11 and verse 1, or actually Proverbs 16. Uh, this is Proverbs 20 and verse 10. It's good too, but I didn't find the precept I was looking for. But this is Proverbs 20 and 10. It says, diverse weights and diverse measures, both of them are alike abomination to the Lord. You see, so how Esau is running the world, essentially it's an abomination, and at the same time, all right, it's diverse. Everything is supposed to be, level. It's supposed to be what's normal and what's just by taking, the trees out of the equation, by taking, shrimp, crabs, and lobsters, making them delicacies to where people is eating them. That's throwing the whole ecosystem out of whack and out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Now, if I may add too, I was meditating on this earlier this morning. When brothers, this is just an exhortation to the Spirit, the Holy Spirit. This is what we fight for.
Hmm.
When we talk about the restoration of Israel, the elect being sealed, the sealing of the elect is synonymous with the world being at peace. You know, so the things that we're doing, Akim, as well as you, Aqua, that may be listening, just continue to fight because your fight is bigger than you. You know, the trials and tribulations you face, it's bigger than us. This is just the story that's written for the elected. Lord willing, we be a part of it, right? So we just gotta endure hardness as a good soldier of Yahweh Shai Hamashiach because I wanna see the earth in its right state. I wanna see the people in their right state. I want the world to be governed in righteousness, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Con.
Right. Peace.
Yeah.
Because it's just I was meditating upon this too. Just yesterday. Like peace on the earth. Like it. Like I don't know. Just something that came to my mind was like, you could just go out to get your own piece of land and everything, but at the end of the day, you still won't be at peace because who is controlling everything. Like this man
Right.
needs to get the fuck up out of here because, like you mentioned before, his soul is not upright in him. Like
Right.
here it is. This man has all the money in the world. He's got everything that he could possibly want. But as the scripture says, his desire is as hell and cannot be satisfied. Or is as death and cannot be satisfied. So being that this man is unsatiable, we see him, just running rampant, man, just doing whatever to try to attain all the resources and collect everything for himself, you know. And again, it's not enough. He's destroying the earth. He's destroying everything. Shit. He's destroying the people. He's destroying us.
Right.
Going into this lesson, how we resemble trees. Men resemble trees, right? Being upright. Who's the main target? Again, that Esau is pretty much gunning for, the upright ones, the elect.
Right. And
Right.
it's the spirit too that he mows down the force, and ultimately, we are that spiritual force, as you're going into.
God,
Yep.
Yeah, we can get a little bit more if bros didn't have nothing else.
God. Want me to continue reading this or a different article?
The same one.
God. So continuing on in this, it
It says
says
he was
right
at
here.
he caused the I believe he was that he caused the secret life, my bad.
Con. So, okay, Con. So it says he caused his network. He caused his network in the Slakia. He caused his network the internet of the forest, and with good reason. It says the how do you pronounce this? Makorze,
Yeah, something like that.
kind of the Makorze that can even be seen with the naked eye under the dead leaves of trees in a beech forest, for example. So are many little cables by which the trees are linked to each other.
Showing you that essentially what Esau has. Esau is a true culture vulture. He didn't get the Lord put the spirit on Esau to make the internet for this truth, pursuant to Psalms the 19th chapter. But it's showing you that the internet, all right, we got a similitude of the internet, in the trees.
Mm-hmm. Right. So it says
You could
whatever this word is, mycorrhiza,
also like, yeah, keep going.
kind of from the Greek myco, fungus, and rhiza, meaning root, is a term introduced in 1885 by the botanist Albert Bernhard Frank, it defines the symbiotic relationship that exists between tree roots and the long underground threads woven by mycelia, which, if you map them underground, resembles our World Wide Web. That's why biologists call it the Wood Wide Web. It
Mm.
says in 1997, Canadian researcher Suzanne Simard was the first to demonstrate this uh, mycorrhizal carbon transfer network between trees in natural conditions.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
This it's just a little bit more. Probably
Con,
about 2 paragraphs.
con. It says so far from getting in each other's way, fungi and trees live in harmony and have developed a form of mutual aid that leads us to believe that one would not live without the other, and vice versa, or with the greatest difficulty. The two
And then
exchange.
if I could add too, it said one doesn't live without the other, pursuant
Mm-hmm,
to Proverbs 29:2. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. And then
mm-hmm,
also everything is going to be rejoicing, you see, because the righteous again is going to run everything in the correct fashion, because the trees ultimately, and that goes back to the precept that you had brought out, Romans 8, and I believe it was the 22nd chapter. The earnest expectation of the creature is waiting, roughly paraphrasing, for the sons of God to be back in rulership, because ultimately the whole creation relies on us, through the Spirit, because how Esau running the planet Earth, everything's being destroyed. Like he makes these streets, all right, turtles, they cross in the street, they get fucked up by the cars. Like he throws up these apartments and stuff like that. Interstates. All right, deer's running onto the interstate, they get smacked by a car. All right, and now it's just roadkill.
mm-hmm. Con, it says, continuing on, this is the two exchange organic matter and minerals, with the fungi drinking the water captured and stored by the tree roots.
Can you skip down to where it says telephones, mushrooms? Yeah, right
Con,
there.
it says, when mushrooms act as telephones for trees, the plant world is far more complex and intelligent than we may think.
And
We might think.
if I can mention too, you know, phones are also shaped like mushrooms as well. How I got the little cup thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like the old school telephone. Now we got the the smartphones, but the old school telephones, it was kind of, they had the little round shape, and then they had the little things at the end.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Con, it says, while trees' intelligence still rises a few minor criticisms, their capacity to adapt is well established, as is their memory, not to mention the defense strategies they can implement to protect each other. It is through the root network that trees of the same species communicate with each other within the forest. But not only that, as a television report broadcast on Envoy special clearly shows, collective strategy is the order of the day between cogners or congeners. When a tree say say a beech is attacked by caterpillars, parasites, or simply a deer that is that has come to graze on its leaves or buds, it immediately warns its congeners of the danger that has arrived. Like birds which utter easily recognize recognizable cries when a predator enters the vicinity, trees warn each other. They are only slower, but the information passes from the branches to the roots via the trunk, and from the roots to the other trees which they are connected.
Right. So essentially, again, going back, which we're not gonna go into the whole article, but essentially, the Lord set it up to where it's a whole network. Esau has made it to where, oh well, like for example, he's called a dog. A dog's true name is Kalab, you see, but a fish's name is Dog. So he reversed that order, you see, but by calling things out of their name, it puts them out of their unnatural habitat and the unnatural ecosystem. What Esau has done is essentially he said that things, he treats things as if they're objects. and they don't really have a purpose. But again, by doing this, things aren't able to ultimately function and what they're supposed to do.
Right.
Mhm.
That's why the scriptures speak about how the earth is out of course.
God,
Mhm.
I'm gonna get that. This is Psalms chapter 82 and verse 5. It says, "They know not, neither do excuse me. They know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are out of course."
Hmm. Yeah. Everything has its right place in the world, you know. Everything was created for a purpose. The Lord didn't create anything without purpose. Even the wicked was created with a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
As
Mhm.
senseless as that nigga might be, you
Mhm.
know?
God, I'm gonna get this too. This the word for foundation in that word or in that verse. It says mawasad, or yeah, mawasad, and it says from the root word yasad, and it says to found, to fix, establish, lay foundation, to fix or seat themselves close together, sit in conclave, to be founded, to
Hmm.
ordain. So pretty much, when everything was created, when Allah Hayim essentially made everything, it was a blueprint. It was a blueprint with it. All right, and essentially when things was created, it was said that, hey, this is good. You see, so
Mhm.
it won't no need to, okay, all right, cut down the forests, take this, let's put this over here, make zoos, do this, do that, because then now it's messing up everything, and now the earth is at a state to where everything is destroyed.
Yep.
Right. And that's why people's own biological structure is out of whack too, because we're also one with the earth. You know,
Right.
we're creation as well, and as everything is out of whack, as we see, well, like the scriptures talk about, um, everything is out of course. You know what I'm saying? All because our own transgressions. Our own. Because we went off. Everything else. Has pretty much fell apart in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, that was pretty much all I had. Bros ain't had nothing else.
Con,
Lots.
I have something real quick.
Kai, you good?
This is Ecclesiastes 7 and verse 29. It says, "Lo, this only have I found, that the Most High hath made man upright, but they have sought out many inventions." Right, those inventions being their own devices, right, their own imaginations, their own ideas. You know, and but the Most High originally made us to be upright. Made us to be, as it says in Wisdom of Solomon 2:23, right? How he made us to be immortal, right? An image of his
Mm-hmm.
own eternity, right? So we were supposed to be, a representation of the Lord's righteousness here on the planet Earth. But because we fell away and we sought out, you know, we went after our own heart in a sense. We pretty much have became as we are, crooked.
Right.
Going back to Romans the 11th chapter, right? Being that wild olive tree. That wild olive tree, isn't taken care of. Is what they call it, unkempt, meaning is all crooked. Like a wild tree out in the forest. Is it has scratches, it has broken branches. It's all messed up. But whenever you look at the good olive tree, what is taken care of. It's nurtured, it's being trimmed up, it's being watered frequently, fertilized or whatever, has its proper nutrients because it's being taken care of by the husbandman, which is,
Right.
the Lord Yahweh.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That degenerate plant, you know, JK being cultivated, like you said, by the true husbandman, you know. I was watching this video of Mike Tyson, and he was talking to this UFC fighter, and he was like, when you're favored by the Most High, you're favored by Satan also. And he said, you got to make sure you got to leave the dance with the one that brought you there.
Mm,
Jake is under the impression that, oh, Esau is my God. Esau makes these things possible. He's the one that's right in all his ways. But that's not the case. That man is deceiving you, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's the serpent, you know, that beguiled Eve and has pretty much walked our people down this track, you know, of living in lasciviousness and the ways of the flesh, being beguiled by the serpent. Jake's still beguiled by the serpent, thinking, "Oh, he's the husbandman." No,
Mm.
that nigga. Y'all ever remember that? It was this Jake that was going around the country, um, impersonating himself with like jobs. This nigga was an OBGYN looking at girls' pussy and shit. That nigga was not qualified at all. But that's Esau, you know.
Imposter.
He's an imposter. Like the scriptures speak about is Second Thessalonians, right? Sitting in the Most High, sitting in the seat of the
Mhm.
Most High, right? Who said you could be there? Like you're not the one that's the husband. You're not the
Mhm.
husbandman. You're not the one that's set to cultivate things and nourish the world.
I got this
It's,
real fast. This is
mhm.
Ayawab Job 13 and verse 4. It says, "But yea, our forgers of lies, ye are physicians of no value." And a true physician is supposed to heal. You see, but Esau is destroying, and then also to touch on the beginning part says, "But yeah, are forgers of lies." Ultimately he's a true imposter. Scriptures say in Psalms 144th chapter, he has a right hand of falsehood, so he relies on deception. Scripture also talk about how he has transformed himself into a angel of light. So
Hmm.
essentially, how this man rules again, all right, is through deception. All right, he gives the guise of all right stability, and this is good for you. You see, but all in all, it's ultimately destroying in the long run.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, bros had any more precepts?
Uh,
La.
Hey, well, I don't want to Zaza by Naya Paulos, but there was a beautiful edification through the spirit. While I don't want to Zaza, Atam Yawam Tawab, Lord as well. You all have a good day. While we can go ahead and close it out by saying, Call Halayim La, Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Ruch HaKodash. While double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that taught us truth and rule well. Much respect to you, bros, out there pushing this truth with all righteousness and sincerity. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom.